Welcome back to Fitness or Fiction. I'm joined with Master Trainer Curtis Howden. That's official title. I've seen it before in magazines. Today we're going to discuss how intense should your workouts be, the minimalist equipment for your home gym, and the key to better poops.
Yay, better poops!
So, how intense should it be? This is something that you wanted to discuss.
Don't put that on me.
This is your fault. It's your fault that we're talking about this.
Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
You told me a story, though. And we've actually talked about intensity before, being like, how intense should it be? It's like beating a dead horse. But
Yeah, but in some ways, this is kind of the linchpin. Like, if you can manage your intensity well, you can choose some pretty subpar crap and still get some results.
yeah.
It doesn't need to be a perfect exercise or anything like that, but if you know how to push and when to push, you can make a lot of results.
Yeah.
So I think I'll tell the story. Should I tell the story?
Tell the story.
Okay, so the story goes like this. So there's this girl, she's working out at the gym. Her name's Amaka. Shout out to Amaka. Yeah. This is a good story, so she can be okay. But she's working out, and I see her doing the leg press. And the leg press sled that we have at Royal Oak Evolve is it's a big sled. So it's got some weight to it already before any weight. So I seen her doing this thing. She's a formidable girl, man. She's like, I know she's strong, but she's got 25 aside on it. And I looked over and I was like, she can do way more than that. I wonder if she knows that. So I rolled over and I put on a plate aside. I said, you can do more than this. And she did a couple reps. I'm like, stop. You can do 2 plates aside. I guarantee you. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be way more valuable. Your time is going to be worth more because you did this. So we put it on. She crushed it. She did the weight. It was hard. I knew it was hard for her. She pushed through. I helped her push a couple extra reps, whatever. So she finishes it up. Give her a high five, end of day, whatever. She's another trainer's client. I'm just helping, right? So today I see her doing the same drill. It's on her program, so lo and behold, she's doing the same drill. But what I saw was she went to the weight we used last time because A, she knew she could do it, and B, she felt like there was some more there for her, I believe. I need to ask her specifically about it, but I saw her do it, and I was with my clients, and I said, hey, Amaka, and she looks over, and I'm like, hey, listen, 2 plates aside, and she's like, no, wait, and she thought I was going to push her more. I'm like, no, stop. I'm commending you. Like, you did this week what last week seemed ridiculous for you. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a huge win. Good for you. Like, yeah, go kill it. Love it, right? And then she's like, oh, okay, I'll take that, right? But it got me thinking on this thing where it's like, yeah, we've talked about intensity a lot, but I think a lot of times what people need to understand is what they're actually capable of, which means that what are we actually training them for? We're training them to understand what intensity feels like.
Yeah.
So it's not even this game of like, well, you have to work X amount of intensity or whatever. It's like, over time, why do you get better? Because your idea of what intensity is changes. And yeah, there's going to be physiological changes where you're actually stronger and whatever else. But once you see that you can do something, you're much more likely to do it.
Yeah, it's like building your mental resiliency to intensity. Just like we've built mental resiliency towards heavy. We've both seen people where we get them to lift something, they're like, whoa, that's heavy. And we're like, no, it wasn't. That thing shot up off the ground. Like, the bar speed was insane. You didn't even struggle at all. Just because it's heavier than you've done before doesn't mean that it was actually heavy. So trying to change that perception.
Yeah, well, but you get to this level where you start seeing these big steps forward. Mm-hmm. And like, what's the big step forward? Was it that you got that much stronger? Or is it that your perspective on what you could do shifted?
Yeah.
Like yesterday, I finished my joint level strength class, and 2 of my clients, I had another trainer that was commending them, being like, hey, you guys are doing so much better and whatever else. And I didn't know this conversation was going on, but then I had them do yoke carries because both of them need better side-to-side stability for their hips. And I'm like, okay, so, and then one of them, Mandy, she needs the ability to actually load her upper back properly so she doesn't kick her chin forward and settle it on her neck, right? So I'm like, okay, there's a big reason for both of you to do this. We're going to do it together because it's going to be like a challenging thing and whatever. The first set, they both were like, I can't even stand up with this. It's so heavy. And it like their view of it was like, I can't climb this mountain. Mm-hmm. And then I got a 90-pound barbell and I put it on their back. It's probably about 170 pounds, this thing, right? So I go and I put this 90-pound barbell on their back to convince them they can do it, whatever. By the fourth set, they're walking the entire length of the track with it and standing up like it's no thing. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's like part of being a good trainer, in my view, is being able to see what somebody's actually capable of, like seeing behind what they're presenting and knowing what they're capable of truly.
Yeah.
And when they both saw that, you should have seen them. Like the one of them looks at me and she goes, best day ever. And I look over at the other trainer and she's just shaking her head like, wow. And I'm like, man, like these women are capable, awesome people in the first place, but their view on what they're capable of has gone further. Mm-hmm. Man, I think that's more than just exercise. I think that makes people better at life.
Yeah, it's weird. I've told people that outrightly that that's what I'm going to do with them when I start training them. Like I've liked to train when I was in the commercial gym. I would approach the big monsters of the gym and try to train them because I'm like, man, like, I just want to see what you're capable of. Like you're like a remote control car that I just want to take for a test drive and see like how much can we do before you actually like burn out kind of thing. Let's see how tough you are, big guy. And they almost take it as a compliment, like, oh, okay, yeah, let's see. And
you're right, I am pretty awesome.
Even to that point, if they're pushing at like maybe 70% of their perceived intensity, I'll take them up to 100%. And they're like, oh, damn, like they didn't even realize, even though they were the big monsters of the gym, they didn't realize that they could reach those new heights or those new levels. And then also just with perception of intensity, before I was a trainer, I was exercising with my good friend Denza. And I remember this distinctly. He is on the pec deck and is like maybe 135 or something. You know, this is like 12 years ago. And he's doing 135 and he does like his, 7 reps or something. We're shooting for 10. I was like, oh, bang, it's too heavy. Can you drop the pin a little bit? I'm like, yeah, sure, homie. 135, 165. Okay, it's dropped. Get it. Bang, 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 bang. And I'm like, Denza, you mother.
Yeah. And that makes me proud of you.
It's just,
I like that for him, but that makes me proud of you. I like that.
And it's just the fact that, people need that extra, they need to like, how do you say it? Just have it be shown to them. Like you can go faster, you can go further, you can lift heavier.
That's the foundation of good relationships, man.
Pushing?
Like the people you should hang out with are the people that let you see the best in you. Right? And people I have examples of people getting frustrated at me by this, but the people that are best to hang out with, this is one of those things where exercise shows you pieces of life. But I learn more about people when I work out with them than I learn about them almost any other situation, because you see so much of where they're at. Mm-hmm. Not even their character necessarily, it can be that, but often about where they're at that day and like their abilities on that day, not long term, but it'll show you these glimmers of like who they really are and what they have to give that day and all these sort of things. But like in a real relationship, like these are the best kinds of relationships when you're with somebody that being with them makes you better. Mm-hmm. That to me that's what should be strived for in a lot of situations, not just training with relationships in general.
Yeah. Agreed. Good point.
Yeah. I think for me, how hard should I train ends up being like, what's my sensation of how hard is that? How long have I been at that particular weight? And it's like, well, it's not even just weight. Did it look better? Did it move faster? Like the intensity should, by all rights, be getting better on the same lift. Like it should be feeling easier over time. But you should also be striving to understand how much more can I go in a productive way that you're holding the metrics behind the exercise. So we're not cheating. We're not just doing more to do more. We're actually saying, can I maintain the quality and get a little bit more out of this?
Yeah.
Right?
Just to compound onto that too. You already said it, but like technical wins of like making things feel easier, like Olympic weightlifting. I can snatch 135 and have it feel like a dump truck, just insanely heavy, like a big dump truck.
A toilet seat.
A big toilet seat. Or I can snatch 135 and have it just teleport and feel great. My best jerk ever, I think, was like 225. Nothing crazy, but big win for me. And when I jerked 225, that bar teleported up there. Yeah. And by the time I finished it, I was like, what just happened? What just happened? And then I was like, okay, I guess we'll recover. And then step, step, step. And then I was standing and I was like, holy crap. Same thing with my handstands. Technical wins being, I can hold for 30 seconds in poor position, but if I hold for 30 seconds in optimal position and my shoulders are warmed up and primed up and ready to be in position, 30 seconds almost feels like nothing when you're stacked correctly, right? So those technical wins.
Yeah. Well, how hard should I work out? What do you got that day?
Mm-hmm.
What do you got that day? Are you expressing this the best you can? Or did you just kind of go through the motions? It's like, man, there's a point. There is a point to going through the motions. I'll take that. But, you're going to get the best changes when you show up and express what you're capable of that day.
I think it's hard for people to do that when they're by themselves too.
For sure.
When I'm in here in my gym by myself training, it's hard to reach that maximum output and not falter. I'm sure you've experienced it as well in your gym. And then we've talked to good friends of ours like Big Merc at, in the swimming pool. I talked to Merc about that. And I was like, yeah, when I'm training in my home gym, I have to learn how to find intensity without other people looking at me. And he's like, bro, that's why I go to the gym, because everyone's looking, so it makes me push harder. And I've experienced that as well. Like if you're on stage and there's people around, like you're going to try to push a little bit and flaunt a little bit more. It's easier to push in front of a crowd. So I don't know where I'm going with this.
Shared experience of suffering is part of being a human. That's how you make the best friendships. That's how you get the best out of people. And I'm not saying suffering like it needs to be a bad experience. I'm saying when you're going through something and you're running through challenge and figuring out the best way to get through, that's how you make really good relationships. And you find out really quick that we are meant to be relational creatures. Mm-hmm. Like that's how we formed. It takes a village to raise a child. Like these are things we take as just basic truths, but like part of being a human is understanding that relationships, especially relationships done well, make you better. And it is the highest calling to be the person that gets to be that for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that to me is a truth that's beyond true. So,
yeah. Should we go on topic 2?
Yeah, we should. Let's do that.
The best minimalistic piece of equipment for home.
Yeah. So when we start talking about the minimalist equipment, minimalist equipment for me, like COVID really shifted my perspective. Like I left my workplace of 16 years in the middle of COVID, like right before a shutdown.
Yeah.
And it really changed my perspective on what works best or what somebody might need in some ways, because it's like, well, here's how I would program for somebody in the gym. And then it was like, well, I have almost nothing. It's like, well, I have $160 to buy stuff. What should I buy? And like these questions started becoming more commonplace for obvious reasons, right? But it's really interesting when somebody gives you a budget and it's like, well, what should I get? So like, what is your answer? Let's get into this one with you.
When I came up with this topic or this question, it was more along the lines of they don't want to build a home gym. They just want some equipment that they can utilize. It doesn't take up too much space on a tight budget, so something that's going to be budget friendly with no intention of really building up to something larger. So for me...
Can I pause you there for a second? I think that's perfect for this conversation to be like, okay, the foundation, the conversation is built on the idea that we're not trying to build a big home gym. We're not an exercise hippie like Eric and Curtis that wants a big setup. It's going to be like a short-lived thing or something to like augment what the other stuff that I'm doing. So it's not, I don't plan on going anywhere else. So we can bridle that and contextualize that based on, okay, so my budget is say $200 or less, and I'm not looking to get anything else. So what should I get? Is that fair? Okay, continue.
So for me, that's plain and simply kettlebells. I think that's the most versatile piece of equipment. And normally what I would tell people when they ask me is get one light kettlebell so you can work on technique and technical movements, and then get one medium-sized kettlebell so you can work on like your swings and your deadlifts and your squats, and you can row with it. I don't really like it, but you can do like your accessory work too. Like you can do triceps with kettlebells and biceps. I don't personally like curling a kettlebell.
It feels a little wrong,
yeah. But that doesn't mean if you have a home gym and you have a light kettlebell, it can get the job done for some bicep curls if you need it to.
Yeah, I have to come clean.
You bicep curled a kettlebell?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I program it in for other people.
Kettlebell bicep curls?
Yeah, yeah.
Dog.
And like a triple crusher where you do the bicep curl, you press it up overhead, and then you do the skull crush or the French press, and then you come back down. Triple crusher. I got that from Guy Metzger. But like, It feels wrong, but if that's what you have, why wouldn't you use it for load? And I'll tell you why you wouldn't. Because some people, they make these divisions in their mind that it's like, don't cross. I can't curl in the squat rack. I curl in my squat rack at home sometimes.
You know, Christian Bale curled garbage bags of water in prison in a movie.
Yeah, he did.
On TV.
I read it in a book. Yeah, no, it's true. Like this. So the tool of a kettlebell is very versatile, and we could get really nuanced in this. We tend to go that way almost into the point of being pedantic. Like we like to pull these topics apart and say, let's understand more of the details and context and nuance and whatever else. But if we don't do that and we just leave it surface level, we don't understand somebody's goal, but we understand what their goal for their space is, I think the answer of kettlebells I can get behind.
In a functional sense, if you want to just like have a healthy body and functional, you're not trying to bodybuild and put on as much mass as possible.
Yeah.
I also think kettlebells on the internet, say if you're cruising TikTok or Instagram, has tons and tons of different flows that you can steal from people or rip off from people. Like, oh, you do a swing and then you do a lunge and then you twist here and then you press it kind of thing. And it can kind of make really easy, playful workouts.
Yeah, I like how the creativity thing can come in there. I like the idea of a kettlebell complex just because, you know, it's not going to be the best for stimulus, particularly for a muscle. It's not going to be the best for like really targeted stuff. But like if you're looking for, I just want to do something so I can feel good.
I need to move.
Yeah, as I get older, man, I recognize like I need a certain amount of workouts. Like if I go more than 2 days without a workout, I recognize the difference in how I feel in the morning emotionally.
It's weird too, though, because we're in the space of mastery, I guess. Not that I'm a master, you're the master, but mastery being like we've been in the career for so long. I went from a space in my first year of as a trainer, everything, I just wanted it all to be fun and just playful and fun and playful and fun. And then after 5 years, it was no longer about what was fun. It was about what was most optimal. What's going to provide the result the quickest, and take the fun, throw it out the window. So clients would come and be like, I saw this YouTube video of this influencer doing bicep curls where he'd like pump 3 times here and then squeeze and then he'd let go and then he'd twist it back and twiddle it over to the side a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's fun, but it's not optimal. So let's just stick to what's actually going to work the best. And now after 10 years, I'm starting to try to lean towards, you know, like it's got to be a little bit fun in order to continue going down the ride. If you're just doing what's most optimal, what hits the target, like the muscle the best and the best stimulus, it can get boring for me. Anyways, that's the phase I'm in.
You got to be process oriented at some point because the best program, most optimal program in the world is not that anymore if somebody isn't motivated to do it.
Yeah.
And your levels of engagement with clients are going to be different. And even your particular level of engagement based on the week and what you have going on elsewhere is going to be variable. And I think that really ends up being a roadblock for people. But in a lot of ways, you can adapt the kettlebell to so many different things. Could you use it for bodybuilding stimulus? Yeah, you could. It would feel like sacrilege, but you can do it.
Maybe not to a non-gym, like a non-exerciser.
Totally.
They're not going to notice the difference.
Well, if you were to say, well, I just want to do some cardio, you can do it without going anywhere. And people will say crap like, well, why don't you just go out for a run? That's free. It's like, well, if you live in Canada, that's not an option a lot of days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think as far as versatility, I think when you look at it, get a light and a heavy, typically that's going to be dependent on person as well, depending on their current strength levels. Like there's some people that I would be like, you know what, 8 kilo and 12 kilo is probably all you need.
Yeah.
And there's other people that I'd be like, you know what, start with a 16 and a 24 kilo. So it's going to be different per person, but instead of putting together a gym, like we could talk another time on how to make like a functional space
home gym on a
to
budget.
train people in.
Yeah.
But really at the end of the day, when we're talking about like, this is not your life, this is something you're using to augment your life. We don't want it to blow your brains out for details or cost. I think that's a perfect answer. It's just going to be one light, one heavy kettlebell. Just let her go.
On the flip side, we also discussed for another option, like a pair of rings is really great.
Yeah, the other end of this. So getting a pair of rings, I would choose over a TRX because they're more... I know, sacrilege again. I know.
Is that, Curtis? Is that because a TRX costs $250 and rings only cost $25? You cheap.
Hey, listen, I got 3 kids, you know. No, the thing for me with rings, the reason that they're more they're more applicable and they can be more versatile is the idea that, yeah, they take a little longer to adjust and whatever else, but I can't teach somebody false grip with a TRX. There's things because it's attached in the middle that I can't teach people how to do dips very well with it. Like there's a lot of things that just aren't an option. And I have to be honest, I got to think about if I got 2 rings and I put them far enough apart, I can do some monkey bars. Everybody loves monkey bars.
Yeah.
My kids especially, and you can get them for $26 on Amazon. I have like 6 pairs at my house because my kids use them as monkey bar rings all the time. So for me, that would be a big win. And then if you get like a few of those hip bands or even just resistance bands, like a pack of those longer ones, like if you get long bands, short bands, and rings, it's going to be cheaper than the kettlebells, and you're going to be able to make a lot of stuff work.
Yeah.
The challenge with that I would say immediately is that there's so much more complexity to setting them up and getting everything straightened out. So that's the only reason why I would actually tend to say kettlebells. How do you feel on the topic, sir?
On the bands thing, yeah, I agree. One of the greatest things that we did for bands, I stole this idea from you, was setting up these wall anchors on the back here. If you're watching the YouTube video, if you're just hearing audio, I have anchors drilled into my studs at varying heights as a tag team system here. And that allows me to just quickly mount a band to high and low positions for different exercises and not having, this is when I didn't have a big fancy cable machine. Yeah. Even still, I have the big fancy cable machine. I will still opt in to utilize my bands and the anchors here regularly, like daily.
Specifically for pressing, they work fantastic because the resistance profile gets harder as it gets easier for you to press.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's all I had for years. I was working out in my garage with just the little clips like this. You got a carabiner on the end, handles on the other end. And I did that for years before I had cables, and it takes up almost no space. There's a lot of winds there. But like the idea of having a full wall space, I just had one high and one low on either side, and they worked great. Mm-hmm. But that's not an option for everybody. But when you look at 2 sets of bands and a pair of rings, it's cheap. And you can make a lot of stuff work. And I've had multiple clients set up a system like this in their house, and they love it. Like it works out really good. So I can get behind that as well. But it really will depend on the space available and the type of exerciser. But the easiest, the simplest thing, the kettlebells get there, they sit on the floor. That's it.
I was going to say, too, to summarize this or finish this topic off, for the kettlebells, me personally, I definitely tell people to make sure that they invest into the pro-grade kettlebells. Yeah. There's a big difference on that for me. So cheaper kettlebells are going to be varying sizes. If you get a 5-pound kettlebell, it's going to be like the size of your fist. And working with that, maybe for some things it's more comfortable, but with a lot of the actual kettlebell movements, it's not very comfortable. And to invest in a quality set of kettlebells, if you actually plan on utilizing them for their whole lifespan, which is going to be your whole lifespan pretty much, spending the extra $20 or $30 on like a better quality kettlebell is going to make a difference.
Well, and they do look a little bit more intimidating because they're bigger, but the standard or cast iron ones are the ones that change sizes. Mm-hmm. And then your pro grade or your kettlebell sport variation, those are going to be the ones that they're always the same size. So your technique doesn't have to change as you get stronger either. Yeah. So it ends up being a big win. There are some things where it's nice to have a tiny kettlebell around that are just a little bit more comfortable, but I'd say they're few and far between. So I would typically agree with you and say, opt for that pro grade because I've had both and I don't buy the standard or cast iron ones anymore. Yeah.
And our last topic today is the key to better poops from your dump truck.
Yeah. Dookie from the dumper.
A dookie from the dumper. So we brought this up just so we're brainstorming topics. We wanted to talk about different things like, tool-based, mindset-based, and then we dab a little bit on nutrition. We talked about the key to better poops because it
is underrated.
That's an indicator on how well your system is doing. If you're having terrible poops every day and you're just ignoring it, and I know people, and if you're triggered by me saying that, then it's probably you who's listening.
Are you speaking for everybody again?
I'm speaking. If you're feeling triggered, then you need to think about it. If you're having terrible poops every day and you're still eating Philly cheesesteaks and poutines and garbage food and you're crushing Slurpees and your poops are not regular and they're not, what's the Bristol stool chart? It's not like a nice smooth like sausage. It's got to be a nice log. However you want to slice it is a key indicator on how well and how healthy your gut is doing.
Yeah, and that is an indicator on recovery. It's going to impact sleep. It's going to impact the way that you feel emotionally.
It's an indicator on stress.
That's right.
So I bring this up from my side of the story because you have a point that you're going to make. I'm going to have a point to make.
It. This is primary Eric.
Well, 2 years ago, I started developing crazy stomach problems, and I was having very loose stool, and like my stomach was just trashed, and nothing I could do.
The mud butt.
Yeah. Nothing I could do was helping my stomach out, and I thought it was stress, and I thought it was like I started cutting gluten, dairy, all this random stuff, and nothing was really helping. For me, the biggest thing that I made, like the biggest change I made this year was increasing my fermented food intake. And I tried taking many different probiotics personally.
Oh, you went the fiber route. You went
fiber
all over the place.
Yeah. And the thing that made the biggest difference to me was taking fermented foods, and which is high in probiotics. But there's a big difference between taking probiotic pills that has 70 billion bacteria. It's not like how bioavailable is that bacteria. When you take that superpowered pill, and just taking those probiotic pills was trashing my stomach in a different way because it was like dropping a nuclear bomb of bacteria into my stomach. Whereas now what I do with my fermented food is every day I try to eat kimchi or sauerkraut or kefir, specifically coconut kefir, which is all different variations of fermented foods. And I don't even really like kimchi that much. It's like spicy and it's not like my favorite, but I eat it like medicine.
Are you choosing the coconut-based kefir specifically because it isn't dairy-based?
Yes.
Does dairy blow you up a little bit?
It seems to. So I try to avoid the dairy. Even right now, my stomach is not perfect, but much improved. But if I try to dabble with cheese, if I'm like, ooh, I'm going to have a little bit of cheese, I notice a difference. If I have cream in my coffee, I notice a difference. So
I think that it's worth mentioning that it's like, okay, so I've dealt with this and whatever. I've noticed a big change since I did X, Y, and Z. It's worth mentioning that a big part of that is you also being a little bit more aware. Because I remember some of our conversations back in like 2020 where we're like, okay, what is setting it off? And you started keeping a log and paying attention. We're talking about poop, and we said taking a log.
Taking a log.
So the end of the day, there is this piece of the puzzle of like, here's something that I applied to help with this. But I think the other side of it that's really worth mentioning is like awareness, like paying attention to what sets off your gut. And this can be a bag of cats. It can be tough. But you started recognizing a few things, and you started noticing like these connections. And like for me, I don't have gluten or dairy specifically because I'm trying to avoid further neurodegeneration. And I don't want to have spikes in C-reactive protein and upregulation of the immune system and all these sorts of things. I don't like eating like that. When somebody says, oh yeah, I eat that way too, and they want to bro down, I'm like, yeah, it's the worst.
Don't talk to me about it.
You know the type of food that has gluten and dairy in it?
Oh, the best
types of food. It's not okay. Like, no, don't just do that because it's the worst.
Yeah.
Like I would do bad things to just have a lemon Danish. But the end of the day, I think a big portion to this whole conversation is like, yeah, here's some things you can apply, but really it starts with awareness, like so many things.
I don't think people realize the detriment that your gut health actually does on your emotional health, because when my stomach was at its worst, I was at my like biggest, deepest like depression, like just miserable, hating life, constantly wondering like, what is the purpose of all this? Why am I even here? Like, what is like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore, just due to my stomach being so trashed. And I notice if I'm having my fermented food and I'm not trying to cheat with cheese or anything like that, if I'm actually just listening to the cues, I've gone through within this year, I've gone through phases where I'm like really good for a couple weeks, like 6-7 weeks. So I'm like, wow, I feel like a rock star. My strength is back. Everything's back. And if I cheat a little bit, or even if I have a beer, dropping the alcohol in my stomach instantly trashes me. As soon as my stomach's trashed, emotionally I'm trashed as well. I'm like more cranky. I'm more irritable, more miserable. Like instantly, that connection is far greater than what people would assume.
So I have some points on this, but first, do you remember the lady in Hitch that was allergic to lobster and she'd sit there and eat lobster? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah,
That would
pretty
have
much.
not tried to cheat.
So many people though. I think a lot
No,
of people
totally.
are actually in that boat.
It's like, is it worth going through the discomfort? And they'll do it anyway.
like,
And
oh
I've
yeah,
been there.
I really just want a pizza. I think I'm just gonna risk it, and then it trashes me.
Totally.
And when it trashes you too, like I talk to naturopath doctors. I don't know what your viewpoint is on it, but like, man, if you had something that actually spikes your system, it can keep your system messed up for 7 to 14 days, potentially longer.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just like, oh, you poop it out and then all of a sudden you're like back to normal. Your system can be out of whack for a while.
Well, like if you look at the research on this, it's really interesting because it ends up, they talk about the gut being the second brain.
Yeah.
Because there's a large portion of the dopamine and serotonin and other neurotransmitters that are actually created in the gut. And based on how you process your food and how well your nutrition gets to your body, it's going to change the amount that your brain can actually express of what it could be.
Yeah.
So like who you're expressing yourself as today could be impacted by what you eat. That's tough, man. That is tough. And so that's why I get back to this whole thing, create some awareness around it. It's hard. I know it's hard. It seems a little hippy dippy, but like if you can form some awareness around this topic and start seeing like, oh man, when this happens, I feel this way and things like that, it can really be a game changer. And for you, the fermented foods and the certain things that you're staying away from, I think all of those are really good things. For me, the other end of it is trying to find foods that you know will do you well that are really easy to set up, like where you can just have that food and it's like it straightens you out. For example, I have a friend named Billy Petrie, and he runs Metabolic Mastery. Metabolic Mastery, he's helping people lose weight without really changing their diet up. And one of the things that he grinds on them about is fiber. If you don't have enough fiber, you are going to have worse bowel movements. You are going to be way more hungry, and you're going to crave really sugary, like quick carbs and things like this that again, don't help with that. So he's like, man, you need to get your soluble and your insoluble fiber. Most people get a lot of insoluble, but they don't get their soluble. And the average person does not get even close to their fiber. So when he was talking about this, I was like, man, you can fix that easy. He's like, no, you need like 25 cups of spinach. I was like, or you could go and you could get a mason jar and do what I do. You get 3 tablespoons of hemp hearts, 3 tablespoons of chia seeds. I usually use black chia seeds unground. And then you use some flax, some ground flax, and then just some regular gluten-free oatmeal. That's 3 tablespoons of each, so it ends up being 12 tablespoons. And then you go ahead and you put a tablespoon or a little bit more, if you're me, of peanut butter. And then you put a tablespoon or a little bit more of jelly because I'm a child. Then you just add water at about 60 or 80% of the amount of mass that you have in the jar. I don't even measure it. And then you just put it in your fridge overnight. And you wake up in the morning, it is delicious.
Your overnight oats. You'll definitely have to play with your own ratios, but the concept is all these nuts, all these like seeds and nuts is where you're getting all the fiber intake.
Yeah, so hemp hearts have a ton of protein. So it's over, with mine, with 3 tablespoons of each, it ends up being over 30 grams of protein, which is pretty good. Your unsaturated fats are already set for the day, and your soluble and insoluble fiber, you've hit your goal for the day. It's over 30 grams. So it's a ton. And by having all that taken care of early in the day, you just need to think about it less. And also, when I do that, I don't need to think about breakfast. It's nice. I can take it on the road. I just grab it with a spoon and walk out. And I don't need to heat it up. I don't need to do anything. It is logistically amazing. But a lot of people, they're like, what do I do for protein and all this sort of stuff? And for me, that's a lot of food. Like that's 1,000 calories in a sitting. For a lot of people, that's way too much. You'd want like 1 tablespoon of each if you're a smaller person that has less caloric needs and all these sort of things. But at the end of the day, when your fiber is on point like that, like I recognize the difference when I'm on my overnight oats train, man.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is like, I don't have to go anywhere crazy to find it. It's at Sobeys. I can get all the stuff that's there. It's easy to make. I literally throw it in the jar the night before. And even if you do it the morning of, it's good to go in about 2 hours. It's not as good, but if you leave it like 2 hours, 4 hours is even better. If you have it overnight, that's the best. But the fact is, if you're taking a step like that, it's also easier for the rest of your day. And for those of you that are really busy, if you can have like just a few things like that in your back pocket that offset the requirement to think about what you're going to eat and take some of the workload or mental space away, it can be a hugely impactful thing.
Yeah.
So
better poops, fermented food, high fiber, banging breakfast.
Yeah. I like starting out the day with getting things straightened out. But end of the day, we went through 3 topics here. We did our topic on best way to start a home gym, and we talked about 2 different ways. We didn't plan on talking about 2 different ways of going about it, but it's nice to have some options based on where you're trying to go. We talked about better dookie, which is always a good thing, and
intensity. Kill yourself.
No, jeez. So
in
aggressive.
The gym. In the gym.
Those are 2 words I wouldn't put together. Usually I don't like that.
Kill yourself in the gym.
But with all of these things, at the end of the day, you and I obviously believe in the value of exercise and taking care of yourself. When you get some of these things locked in, you will notice the difference with the way that you feel. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to be that friend that comes alongside you and says, man, let's be better,
Yeah. The best relationships.
I like that one.
TM.
Yeah.
Trademarked.
Well, if you made it this far, thanks for joining us. If you throw us a like or a review or a follow, something like that, that's all very much appreciated. And for those of you that have reached out and told us, I'd like you to discuss this, I want to hear more about this, continue to do that because we love it. So,
have a good day. Thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate your support.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you would subscribe, follow, and throw us a like on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.